So the Akai APC 64 slots itself between the Ableton Push controller and the Novation Launchpad Pro. For a little bit more money than the Launchpad Pro, you're getting some pretty useful features. And for a lot less money than the Push 3, you may be getting everything you need, but not everything you really want. The features are a big step up for Akai at a very nice price, and these strips have a very useful trick I'll show you in this video. Check it out. It's almost like they took a Novation Launchpad Pro and then stretched it out on the sides and added this screen. I'm gonna run through all the features first, lots to cover here, then I'll compare it with some other controllers, give you some pros and cons, and some thoughts after using this for about a week. So the Akai APC 64 is a MIDI controller for Ableton Live and a standalone step sequencer as well. With 64 pads and the launch buttons on the right, this is clearly for triggering clips and scenes in Ableton Live. Clip triggering is a performance must-have for Ableton Live users, but also great for experimenting with beats. Now, what makes these pads new and interesting is that they're not just velocity sensitive, but they also have poly aftertouch. So you can tap a pad and then press down each pad further to get more expression. Poly aftertouch is becoming more and more common, and now it's on the APC 64. We just saw it introduced on the Native Instruments S-Series keyboards. This even worked with the new Native Instruments plugins that support polyphonic aftertouch. And remember, that's polyphonic, so you can apply different amounts of pressure on different pads. Are you excited about polyphonic aftertouch on MIDI controllers, or can you do without it? Comment below. So what can you do with this? Well, right at the top, you'll see modes, which give you a good idea of the APC 64's capabilities. Session View lets you launch clips and scenes and record in new clips. Note Mode lets you play notes. Chord Mode lets you play chords. Lots of options for chord configurations here. And then there's this, the step sequencer. The step sequencer works internally inside the APC 64, and you can store sequences in here. So create a beat or a sequence of notes, and you can send that MIDI data to Ableton Live or even a hardware synth. This is a pretty cool feature, and I'll show you more of it later in the video. And I'll also compare the APC 64 to the competition, because I have a lot to say about that too. So next, the project button lets you save projects to the APC 64. Save step sequence patterns, device parameters, and custom mode assignments. You can save up to 24 projects to the APC 64's internal memory. There's a custom button that lets you load up user customized functions, and right next to that, you've got play, stop, record, and overdub record. Okay, so nothing crazy interesting yet, but more important is how well does this apply to making music or performing music? Well, that's all about Ableton Live's Session View, right? A controller like this really is all about Session View, performing with live and experimenting with beats. A device like this is not really meant for arranging songs, but a cool feature that makes this controller stand out are the 8 touch strips. Yes, 8 touch strips. No encoders, no knobs here. Let me explain what I like first. Akai has chosen to use touch strips instead of knobs and faders to do things like control Ableton Live devices or plug in parameters. Track volumes, pans, sends, or you can select Channel Strip to control a bunch of controls on just the current selected track. So now it's controlling volume, pan, and sends. You can also more finely adjust things by holding down Shift and then swiping on the touch strips. These strips are replacements for the 8 knobs you typically see on MIDI controllers. The strips are nice because you can control multiple things with one hand, and you can also quickly jump to a value for the parameter you're controlling by just touching that spot on the strip. You can't do this quickly with knobs or faders. But of course, if you're used to faders or knobs, these take a little getting used to. There's another issue with the touch strips with how they work with the screen. As soon as you touch one, that parameter and value shows up on the screen. That's great, but it also means that if you just wanted to see what parameter is controlled by that strip, you actually have to touch it, and in doing so, you're modifying the value. There are some knobs on other controllers that are touch sensitive that will show you the value before you even move it. So I want to give you a quick overview of the other buttons here. There's lots, but it's laid out pretty well, with one caveat. You saw me switching the encoder modes already, so let's move down to the next set. You've got the typical blinking tempo button. Does anyone else find this constant blinking annoying, or is it just me? Comment below. Then you have a bunch of buttons that work with the pads. You can duplicate a clip, apply a fixed length, and quantize a clip. Useful stuff. You'll find similar controls on the Launchpad Pro and the Push. Under that, you've got the very useful undo button. Use this along with Shift to redo. And the Shift button is also used in tandem with other buttons to access more functions you see in white text. You've got navigation buttons on the left. These buttons will let you navigate different things depending on the mode you're in. In session view, it navigates the area of clip triggering. In note mode, it navigates through available drum one-shots or octave up and down. The buttons right at the bottom let you select tracks, and you also have quick access to record arm, mute, solo, or clip stop at the bottom. On the right side, you have scene launchers, and these buttons also have a secondary function with the Shift button, velocity, probability, mutate for use with the step sequencer, and save for the project as well. Right here, they've also included a Stop All Clips button. You need to press Shift, press this button to access it, but I'm glad they included it. I find a physical Stop All button very useful. Now, the screen shows you some useful info depending on what you're controlling. This is a pretty small screen, don't get too excited. It shows the instrument you're using by default, and it also shows you additional info when you're in note, chord, and step sequencer modes. The encoder next to the screen lets you navigate tracks and also dive deeper into other features. You need to hold down the mode buttons or other buttons to see what features are available here. Pressing in the encoder toggles the metronome on and off, which is kind of unusual. I don't like this. I wish they had made a dedicated button for the metronome. On the back, you've got a power switch, the USB port. It's bus powered. You can also use this to power the APC64 if you want to use it standalone for just the sequencer functions. You've got CV gate outputs, a MIDI input and output, and a Kensington lock. All right, so as an Ableton Live controller, this is obviously a much nicer way to launch clips and scenes and control Ableton devices. The inclusion of the touch strips is definitely a win, but the screen, well, I'll need to use it for a little while longer to let you know if it's really useful. You won't get away from looking at your computer screen for lots of functions. This isn't an Ableton Push with the large color screen where you can visually control so much. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll compare them more later in the video. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing to learn more about music production and the latest music gear. Okay, here's a quick demo of the note and chord features. In note mode, you have a full chromatic mode, just like a piano, but you can also select a scale that will eliminate any notes out of that scale. You've got lots of options under chord mode as well. You can also hold down note or chord mode buttons, and this will give you quick access to all the settings without navigating through the screen. Press a button and you'll see what you're changing on the screen. One day, each of these pads will be a screen itself. That'll be the day. Okay, let's talk about the sequencer, which is a really useful feature for me, mainly because Ableton Live itself doesn't have a nice sequencer built into the software. But before we get to the sequencer, if you're writing songs and producing music at home, you should be sharing them with the world. It's super easy to get your music out there using DistroKid, the sponsor of today's video. DistroKid lets you upload your music to Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora, pretty much everywhere. Best of all, they make it really easy. Just upload your track, add some artwork, and they're doing the rest. DistroKid also collects earnings for you when your listeners play or purchase your music, and they help you market your music with tools built right in. A hyperfollow page lets you share your latest music with your friends on Facebook or anywhere you can share a link, and they can easily follow you to get notified of your upcoming releases. I've actually created 2 dedicated videos on DistroKid to give you all the details about how it works, how you upload, and how you get paid. You can watch those videos right here. And if you're ready to sign up, I'll put a link in the video description that'll give you 7% off your first year of membership. So hit step sequence and you can select a note or a drum hit and then input them in the grid above. This works like the Ableton Push. Press play and your sequence plays, and you can add or remove notes to create a nice sequence. You can create multiple sequences and they get saved into projects right on the APC 64. You can also just record a sequence directly to Ableton Live or use the send to clip feature and just send the sequence to a new clip. The APC 64 also allows for chaining sequences together. This gets even more useful if you connect this to a hardware synth with the connections in the back. You've got MIDI outs and CV outs. So this opens up a whole world of possibilities with hardware synths. You can run the APC 64 standalone without connecting it to Ableton Live and still access saved sequences. You can also create custom modes for the APC 64. Akai has created a project editor software that can help you build them. So how does the APC 64 compare to other Ableton Live controllers? The pads are nice with the poly aftertouch, but they aren't fully MPE like the ones on the Push 3, which can do glides and slides. Of course, this is a much more budget device, and if you just want a bit more expression, this gives it to you. Comparing this with the Push 3 is kind of unfair considering the Push is so much more expensive, $600 more for the tethered version and $1,600 more for the standalone Push 3. But the Push will also give you an audio interface built in, and with the standalone, a processor and Ableton Live built in as well. And don't forget that large color screen. Comparing this to the Novation Launchpad Pro is more fair. The APC 64 is $50 more than the Launchpad Pro's retail price. The Launchpad Pro is smaller, more compact, and easier to carry around. You've got many of the same functions, but it's missing the really nice touch strips that the APC 64 has. And the screen too, which may be useful at times. But if you just need a no-nonsense clip triggering controller, the Launchpad Pro is an excellent device, and it has lots of other functions that improves your Ableton Live workflow, and its own sequencer. The Launchpad Pro also has a capture MIDI button that lets you quickly capture MIDI you've been playing, even if you didn't have the record button on. Now, this thing isn't a keyboard, and for keyboardists like me, that means you'll want to have a traditional keyboard controller to use with it. The pads are nice, but I can never get used to inputting notes with this as quickly as I can with a traditional keyboard. And if you're a keyboardist, having a keyboard with clip triggering might be enough for you. You won't get 64 pads on a keyboard, but something like a Novation Launchkey keyboard will give you lots of hands-on control of clips, scenes, and Ableton devices. Now, Akai themselves have made other APC devices which are pretty cool, but don't really come close to what the APC 64 can do. Like I said, this is a big step for Akai. But if you want faders and encoders, the APC 40 Mark II is a nice device. So you can do a lot with the APC 64, but there are a few drawbacks as well. First, the placement of the buttons may not work for everyone, me included. If you're using this on a desk when you're creating music, you'll probably have your hands below it, which means it's quite a stretch to get to the play, stop, and record buttons, and the mode switches as well, which in my opinion get used a lot. In fact, more than the track selectors. At the same time, this may be perfect for performing live, so you can switch the active track quickly at the bottom and have immediate access to adjust plugins. Another thing that's missing is a sustain pedal port. Given how much note and chord inputting you have with this, a sustain port would have been nice. Now, if you have a keyboard connected to your computer as well, Ableton will recognize a sustain pedal connected to it, and you can use it in tandem with the APC 64. Now, the small screen is useful in a pinch, but it's far less useful than the screen on the Ableton Push 3. Also, you can't use the encoder and screen to browse, select, and load instruments and drums. You'll still do that with the mouse or trackpad. Of course, a large color screen would definitely have upped the price of the APC64, so Akai had to pick and choose their features. I think Akai has done really well with the APC64. They've pretty much given us everything we need for Ableton's session view, the nice sequencer, and the price is just right when you compare it to other devices on the market. For live performance and beat making at this price, it's going to be hard to compete. For now. Novation, when's your next Launchpad coming out? If you want to check out my comparison of other Ableton controllers you should consider before buying this one, watch the video right here. Keep making the music you love. Bye.